Welcome to Night Whisper. Night Whisper brings you the darkest tales from the shadows. Join our community. Subscribe, leave a like, and prepare yourself for stories that will haunt your dreams. I'm Alex Morrison, and I have been working the night shift for the previous 6 months at the Highway 39 rest stop. This is one of those places that you see when you take a long road trip. The rest stop is illuminated with fluorescent lights against the black darkness. The building itself contains restrooms and vending machines. Outside, it is nothing but trees for miles. The work looked like it was tailor-made for me when I saw it advertised. The money was surprisingly high for what essentially consisted of sitting by yourself in a tiny office, turning on the lights, and making sure the restrooms were clean. The previous night attendant had simply up and quit, and they were in dire need of qualified personnel. "It's easy work," Margaret, my potential new supervisor, said during my job interview. She was a thin, middle-aged woman with gray hair and a worn expression. "You just have to play by the rules. All of them. Every one." She gave me a laminated card. "This, you're to keep on you at all times during your shift." I looked over the list, expecting the typical company procedures. Then I saw what happened next. Highway 39 rest stop. Night shift rules 1. Arrive before 9:45 p.m. Lock the office door at exactly 10 p.m. 2. The lights in Zone C, Eastern Parking Area, will flicker at 11:17 p.m. This is normal. Do not investigate. 3. If someone knocks on the office door after midnight, check the monitor first. If you cannot see anyone, do not open the door. 4. At 3 a.m., you will hear 3 knocks on the back wall. Acknowledge them by saying, "I hear you," aloud. Do not look outside. 5. If the vending machines display all zeros at the same time, leave the building immediately. Wait in your car until 4 a.m. 6. The bathroom in the West Wing will sometimes sound occupied, running water, footsteps. It is not. Do not enter between midnight and 4 a.m. 7. If you see a woman in a blue dress near the picnic area, she is not real. Ignore her completely. She will try to get your attention. 8. Keep the radio on static between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. If you hear voices, turn the volume down, but do not change the station. 9. At 5 a.m., walk the perimeter of the building once. Stay on the path. Do not step into the grass, no matter what you see or hear. 10. Leave at exactly 6 a.m., not before, not after. What is this?" I asked, looking up at Margaret. Her expression didn't change. "The rules. Follow them exactly, and you'll be fine. The last attendant didn't take them seriously." She paused. "He lasted 3 weeks. What happened to him?" "He quit. That's all you need to know." Margaret stood up, signaling the interview was over. "The job is yours if you want it, but I need to know right now. We can't leave this position empty." I should have walked away. Every instinct told me this was wrong, that no normal job required rules like these. But I'd been unemployed for 4 months, my savings were gone, and my landlord was threatening eviction. "I'll take it," I said. Margaret nodded slowly. "Good. Training is tonight. I'll stay with you for the first shift. After that, you're on your own." The first night, I arrived at 9:30 p.m., giving myself plenty of time before the 9:45 deadline. The rest stop was exactly as I remembered from passing it on road trips, a single-story building with brick walls, large windows, and a flat roof. The parking lot was divided into 3 zones marked A, B, and C, with Zone C extending into a darker section where the overhead lights seemed weaker. Margaret was waiting in the office, a small room with a desk, security monitors, and a coffee maker that looked older than me. The monitors showed feeds from 6 cameras covering the parking lot, restrooms, and exterior perimeter. Rule 1, Margaret said, checking her watch. Lock the door at exactly 10 p.m. Not 9:59, not 10:01. Exactly 10. Why does it matter if? Because it does. You'll understand soon enough. She pointed to the monitors. Rule 2. At 11:17, watch Zone C. The lights will flicker. Don't go outside to check them. Don't even think about it. Is there an electrical problem? Margaret's laugh was dry and humorless. You could say that. The shift started quietly. A few cars pulled in during the first hour, tired travelers using the restrooms, someone getting coffee from the vending machine. Everything seemed normal. Margaret made notes on a clipboard, occasionally checking the monitors. At 11:15, she turned to me. Watch Zone C. In exactly 2 minutes, you'll see. I focused on the monitor showing the eastern parking area. At 11:17 p.m. precisely, the lights began to flicker. Not the random flickering of bad wiring, but a deliberate, rhythmic pattern. Flash, flash, pause. Flash, flash, pause. Like something was communicating. What's causing that? I asked. Don't worry about it. Just remember, you never investigate Zone C during the flicker. If someone breaks down there during this time, they'll have to wait or move their car. That seems... Alex, Margaret's voice was sharp. The rules exist for a reason. Follow them or quit now. I watched the lights continue their strange pattern for another 3 minutes, then stop as suddenly as they'd started. Everything returned to normal. Rule 3, Margaret continued, as if nothing unusual had happened. After midnight, always check the monitors before opening the office door. If someone knocks but you can't see them on camera, they're not really there. What do you mean, not really there? She didn't answer. Instead, she poured herself coffee and settled back in her chair. You'll see. Or, rather, you won't see, and that's the point. The hours crawled by. At 2 a.m., Margaret turned on an old radio on the desk, tuning it to pure static. The white noise filled the small office. Rule 8, she said. Keep it on static until 2:30. If you hear voices, just turn the volume down. Don't change the station, don't turn it off. Just lower the volume. Voices in static? You'd be surprised what you can hear if you listen long enough. At 2:17 a.m., I heard it. Through the static, faint but unmistakable, someone was speaking. I couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was clear. A woman's voice, speaking urgently, desperately. My hand moved toward the dial to tune it in. Don't. Margaret's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Never try to understand what they're saying. Just turn it down. I lowered the volume until the voice faded back into static. Margaret released my wrist and nodded approvingly. You learn fast. That's good. At 3 a.m. exactly, 3 loud knocks echoed from the back wall of the office. The sound was heavy, deliberate. I jumped in my seat. I hear you, Margaret said clearly, her eyes fixed on her clipboard. She didn't look at the wall, didn't acknowledge the knocks beyond those 3 words. We sat in silence for a moment. No more knocks came. Rule 4, she said quietly. Always acknowledge the knocks. Always say, I hear you. Nothing more, nothing less. And never, ever look outside to see what made them. What would I see? Margaret's expression darkened. Nothing you'd want to remember? The rest of the shift passed according to the rules. At 5 a.m., Margaret took me outside for the perimeter walk. She handed me a flashlight and pointed to the concrete path circling the building. Stay on the path. Don't step onto the grass. You might see things in the tree line, shadows that move wrong, shapes that don't make sense. Ignore them. They can't reach you on the path. We walked the perimeter in silence. I kept my eyes on the concrete, but peripheral vision betrayed me. I saw movement in the forest, dark forms that seemed to pace along with us, just beyond the light's reach. Once, I heard what sounded like my name whispered from the trees. I kept walking. Margaret nodded approvingly. At 6 a.m. sharp, We locked up the office and headed to our cars. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the growing light, the rest stop looked completely normal, just another highway facility where travelers could stop, rest, and continue their journeys. "You did well," Margaret said. "Most people break at least one rule on their first night. You followed them all. That's why you get to come back." "What happens if you break a rule?" She looked at me with those tired eyes. "Depends on which rule. Some are warnings. Some are final. The previous attendant learned that the hard way." "You said he quit." "I said he lasted 3 weeks." Margaret unlocked her car. "Those are 2 different things. See you tomorrow night, Alex. And remember, the rules are there to protect you." The first month, I settled into a routine. Over the following weeks. The rules became second nature, ingrained through repetition and the subtle fear that accompanied each shift. The pay was deposited bi-weekly, always more than promised, as if the county knew they were asking something unusual of their night attendants. The Zone C flicker at 11:17 p.m. happened without fail every night. I'd stopped wondering about it, accepting it as an immutable fact of the job. The 3 knocks at 3 a.m. came with the same reliability. "I hear you," I'd say, and continue my work. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially during the long, isolated hours between midnight and dawn. It was my second week when I first broke a rule. A sedan pulled into the parking lot at 12:30 a.m. A man got out, middle-aged, wearing a wrinkled business suit. He approached the office and knocked on the door. I checked the monitors as per Rule 3. The monitors showed empty space where he should have been. I could see him through the office window, clearly standing right outside the door. But on every camera angle that should have captured him, there was nothing. Just empty concrete and the glow of overhead lights. He knocked again, harder this time. "Hello? Is anyone there? I need to use the phone." Rule 3 was clear. If you can't see them on camera, don't open the door. But he looked so real, so normal. A businessman who'd maybe broken down, needed help. What harm could opening the door do? I reached for the doorknob. The phone on the desk rang, making me jump. I picked it up. "This is Margaret. Do not open that door." Her voice was steel. "I'm watching the remote feed. Step away from the door now." "But there's a man." "There is nothing there. Step away from the door and sit down." I backed away from the door, watching through the window. The man's expression changed. His face, which had seemed desperate and normal, began to shift. The features blurred, like looking at someone through rippling water. His mouth opened too wide, showing too many teeth. "Hello?" he said again, but this time the voice sounded wrong. Multiple voices layered over each other. "Let me in. I need help. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." He began pounding on the door, the sound rhythmic and mechanical. His form flickered like bad video. There one moment, something else the next. Something tall and thin with too many joints. I sat down hard in the office chair, my heart hammering. "Keep watching the monitor," Margaret's voice said through the phone. "Not the window, the monitor." I forced myself to look at the screen. It showed exactly what Rule 3 had promised. Nothing. Empty space, where the thing pretending to be a man couldn't exist in the camera's view. After 5 minutes, the knocking stopped. When I looked up, the window showed an empty parking lot. Whatever had been there was gone. "You almost opened the door," Margaret said, her voice heavy with disappointment. "That was very stupid, Alex." "I'm sorry, the rules aren't suggestions. They're not guidelines. They're the difference between finishing your shift and becoming something that knocks on doors, trying to trick the next attendant." She paused. "Don't make me regret hiring you." The line went dead. I sat in the office for the rest of the night, my hands shaking every time I heard a sound outside. At 5 a.m., I did the perimeter walk, staying rigidly on the concrete path. At 6 a.m., I left. Margaret was waiting in the parking lot. "You get one mistake," she said. "Everyone does. You've used yours. The next time you break a rule, there won't be a phone call to save you, understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Good. See you tonight." The woman in blue. 3 weeks into the job, I saw her for the first time. It was 1:30 a.m., and I was doing a routine check of the monitors. Movement in the feed from the picnic area caught my attention. A woman stood near one of the tables, illuminated by the security lights. She wore a blue dress, old-fashioned, like something from a 1950s photograph. Her hair was dark and long, falling past her shoulders. She stood perfectly still, facing the camera. Rule 7. If you see a woman in a blue dress near the picnic area, she is not real. Ignore her completely. I tried to look away, but something about her held my attention. She was so clear, so solid, more real than the thing that had pretended to be a businessman. She didn't flicker or blur. She just stood there, watching. Then she waved at the camera, a small, delicate gesture. I should have looked away, should have followed the rule. Instead, I watched as she began walking toward the building. Her movements were fluid, natural. She didn't float or glide like some ghost from a movie. She walked like any person would walk. She stopped outside the office window. Through the glass, she looked directly at me. Her face was beautiful and sad, with dark eyes that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow. She mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then, she pointed at the forest, gesturing urgently, as if trying to warn me about something in the trees. My hand moved to the door handle. "Rule 7. I said it aloud, forcing myself to remember. "She is not real. Ignore her completely." But she looked so desperate, so insistent. She pressed her hand against the window, and I could see the condensation from her breath on the glass. Real breath, real warmth. How could she not be real? She knocked on the window 1, 2, 3 times. Then she pointed at the forest again, shaking her head violently. Her mouth moved in what looked like a scream, though no sound penetrated the glass. I closed my eyes and turned away from the window. She is not real. She is not real. She is not real. When I opened my eyes and looked at the monitor, the woman was gone. But on the screen, I could see something else. Something in the tree line where she had been pointing. A shape, tall and wrong, moving between the pines. I didn't investigate. I stayed in the office, following every other rule precisely for the rest of the night. But the woman in blue appeared every night after that, sometimes near the picnic area, sometimes by the vending machines. Once, she stood directly outside the office door during my 5 a.m. perimeter walk, still pointing at the forest, still mouthing silent warnings. I ignored her every time, though it got harder each night. There was something in her expression, terror mixed with desperate hope, that made me want to help her, to understand what she was trying to tell me. The radio voices. The static on the radio had become white noise, something I barely noticed during the 30-minute window between 2 and 2:30 a.m. But on my 4th week, the voices became clearer. At first, they were just whispers beneath the static, fragments of sentences, half-formed words. I followed Rule 8 faithfully, turning the volume down whenever I could make out distinct sounds. But one night, the voice came through crystal clear before I could react. "Can't stay on the path forever, Alex. Eventually, you'll have to step into the grass. Eventually, you'll have to look." My blood ran cold. The voice knew my name. I reached for the volume dial, but the voice continued, urgent and intimate, like someone whispering directly into my ear despite coming from the radio speakers. "She's trying to warn you. The woman in blue. She was like you once, an attendant who followed all the rules, until the night she didn't. Now, she's trapped between, trying to save whoever comes after her. I turned the volume all the way down, but I could still hear it, faint but present. Rule 9 is a lie, Alex. You're not safe on the path. You're never safe. The path is just a longer death, that's all. One night something will pull you off it, and then you'll join us. Join her. Join all of us who thought the rules would protect us. At 2:30, the static cut off, as it always did. I sat in the silence, my heart pounding. The voice had sounded so rational, so reasonable. It had spoken with the cadence of truth. But it had tried to make me question the rules. And questioning led to mistakes. Mistakes led to what? Becoming something that knocks on doors? Something in the trees? Something that speaks through static? I made it through the rest of the shift on autopilot, my mind churning. At 5 a.m., I did the perimeter walk, staying rigidly on the concrete path. The shapes in the trees seemed closer tonight, more active. I heard footsteps matching my pace, just beyond the light. "Alex!" The voice came from the darkness, the same voice from the radio. "Just one step into the grass, and you'll understand everything. You'll understand why she points, why she warns, why the rules are really chains." I kept walking, eyes forward. Your predecessor understood. He stepped off the path on his last night. Now he knows the truth. He's free. I completed the circuit and returned to the office. Through the window, I could see the woman in blue standing in the parking lot. She was shaking her head violently, pointing at the forest with both hands now, her mouth open in what looked like a scream, warning me, begging me to understand something. But Rule 7 said to ignore her completely. And I had already used my one mistake, the vending machine incident. It happened during my 6th week, on a Thursday night that had been quiet and routine until 1:47 a.m. I was reviewing some paperwork when I heard an electronic beeping from the main area. I checked the monitor. The vending machines were visible on camera, their LED displays bright in the darkness. Every single display showed zeros. 00:00. All of them at the same time. Rule 5. If the vending machines display all zeros at the same time, leave the building immediately. Wait in your car until 4 a.m. I grabbed my jacket and keys, moving quickly to the door. But as I reached for the handle, I paused. Through the window, I could see my car in the parking lot. Between me and the vehicle, standing in Zone B, was the woman in blue. She stood directly in my path, both arms raised, shaking her head. "Don't come out. Don't leave the building." But the rule was absolute. Leave immediately. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night air. The woman in blue turned to face me fully, her expression transforming into pure horror. She lunged forward, not attacking but trying to push me back, her hands passing through my chest like smoke. I felt it, though, a sensation of ice water flooding my lungs, a desperate urgency that wasn't my own, her terror, her knowledge of what was about to happen. Then I heard it. From inside the building, coming from the direction of the vending machines, a sound like metal grinding against metal, followed by footsteps, heavy footsteps. I ran. The thing that emerged from the rest stop wasn't something I could fully process. It was too large for the doorway but came through anyway, as if space bent around it. It moved on too many legs, its form constantly shifting, and where its head should have been was a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to drink in the light from the parking lot. I reached my car and threw myself inside, locking the doors. The thing stopped at the edge of the building, swaying like something underwater. It made no sound, but I felt its attention on me, cold, ancient, hungry. The woman in blue stood between us, her translucent form flickering like a candle flame. She had positioned herself as a barrier, her arms spread wide. The thing reached toward her with something that might have been a limb, and she screamed. I couldn't hear it, but I saw her mouth open, saw her form ripple with pain. She held her ground. The standoff lasted 3 hours. I sat in my car, watching this ghost of a woman protect me from something that should not exist. At 4 a.m. exactly, as Rule 5 promised, the thing retreated back into the building. The woman in blue collapsed to her knees on the concrete. I got out of the car slowly. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd started seeing her, she smiled, a sad, exhausted smile. Then she pointed one more time at the forest before fading away completely. I went back inside to finish my shift. The vending machines displayed normal numbers. Everything looked untouched. But I knew what I'd seen. The woman in blue wasn't something to be ignored. She was someone trying to help. Someone who had been like me once, an attendant following rules, surviving night after night until something went wrong. And now she was trapped here using whatever strength remained to protect those who came after her. Breaking point. I should have quit after the vending machine incident. Any sane person would have walked away, found a new job, accepted whatever consequences came with unemployment. But something kept me coming back night after night. Maybe it was the money. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was the woman in blue and the desperate need to understand what she was trying to tell me. During my 7th week, I started researching the rest stop's history. The county records were sparse, but I found news articles going back decades. Highway 39 had been built in 1959, cutting through forests that locals had called the Dark Woods for over a century. The rest stop was added in 1962. The first night attendant was a man named Robert Mitchell. He lasted 6 months before disappearing during his shift. His car was found in the parking lot, keys in the ignition, but Robert was gone. The police searched for weeks, but found nothing. Over the following decades, 13 attendants vanished or died in incidents the articles described vaguely as workplace accidents. The last one before me was David Torres. He'd been the attendant Margaret mentioned, the one who lasted 3 weeks. I found his obituary. He'd died in a single car accident 2 days after quitting the job. His car had gone off Highway 39 near mile marker 39, where the rest stop was located. The official report said he'd fallen asleep at the wheel, but the obituary included a photo from his funeral. In the background, barely visible, stood a woman in a blue dress. I dug deeper and found older records. In 1964, a woman named Sarah Mitchell became the rest stop's first female night attendant. She was Robert Mitchell's widow, taking the job after her husband's disappearance, determined to find out what had happened to him. Sarah lasted 3 months. She kept extensive notes, documenting strange occurrences and developing the rules that future attendants would follow. Her notes mentioned the threshold times, specific moments when the boundary between worlds grew thin. 11:17 p.m., 3 a.m., 2 to 2:30 a.m., 5 a.m. She wrote about things in the forest, entities that existed in the spaces between reality and nightmare. She theorized that the rest stop had been built on a weak point, a place where these things could almost push through. The rules, she concluded, were protection, ways to avoid attention, ways to survive. Sarah's final entry was dated October 17, 1964. She wrote about seeing something in Zone C during the 11:17 flicker, something she described as the source of it all, the thing that makes the lights dance. Against all her own rules, she had investigated. Her body was never found. But starting the next week, attendants began reporting a woman in a blue dress appearing near the picnic area. Sarah Mitchell had worn a blue dress on her last night. It was mentioned in the police report, a detail her sister had provided. A blue dress with white buttons. The woman who'd been trying to warn me, who'd protected me from the thing in the building, wasn't some random ghost. She was Sarah Mitchell, trapped in an eternal attempt to save the people who followed in her footsteps. And she'd been pointing at Zone C, at the source, at whatever she'd seen that had trapped her here. The truth in Zone C. On my 8th week, during a rare night when no traveler stopped by, I made a decision that would change everything. At 11:15 p.m., I gathered every flashlight in the office, checked that my phone was fully charged, and stood by the door. When the clocks hit 11:17, I watched the Zone C lights begin their rhythmic flicker on the monitor. Flash, flash, pause. Flash, flash, pause. Rule 2 was absolute. Do not investigate Zone C during the flicker. I unlocked the office door and stepped outside. The air felt wrong immediately, thicker, colder, charged with electricity that made my hair stand on end. The flickering lights cast strobing shadows across the parking lot. In the distance, I could see the woman in blue appear, running toward me, frantically shaking her head and pointing back at the office. I kept walking toward Zone C. The light's pattern intensified as I approached, flickering faster. The shadows between each flash grew darker, deeper, as if the absence of light was becoming something physical. I could hear sounds emerging from those pockets of darkness, whispers, footsteps, the grinding metal sound I'd heard during the vending machine incident. 20 feet from Zone C's perimeter, Sarah's ghost appeared directly in front of me, her form more solid than I'd ever seen it. She pressed both hands against my chest, trying to push me back. Her mouth moved urgently. For the first time, I could read her lips clearly. It sees you now. It knows you're here. Run! But I'd come too far to turn back. I stepped through her translucent form and into Zone C. The world changed. The parking lot was still there, but it existed in layers now, multiple versions of the same space occupying the same reality. I could see the current night, but also fragments of other times. Old cars from the 1960s parked in spaces that currently held modern vehicles. People who weren't there, or were they? They flickered in and out of visibility, some wearing clothes from decades past, all moving with the jerky, uncertain motion of old film footage. And in the center of Zone C, visible only during the flashes of darkness between lights, was the thing Sarah had seen. I can't fully describe it. My brain refused to process all the details, translating what I saw into fragments that almost made sense. It was massive, stretching from the ground up into the sky. Or perhaps it existed in more dimensions than I could perceive, and what I saw was just the portion that intersected with our reality. It had no face, but it was aware. I felt its attention focus on me like a searchlight, cold and vast and infinitely patient. This thing had been here long before Highway 39, long before the rest stop, perhaps long before humans had built anything in these woods. The rest stop hadn't attracted it. The road had cut through its territory, and the rest stop had been built on the exact spot where its presence was strongest. Every person who stopped here, every traveler who used the restrooms or bought something from the vending machines, passed through this thing's domain unknowing. But at certain times, threshold times, it could reach through. It could interact. It could take people who caught its attention. The rules weren't protection. They were a treaty, a set of agreements that, if followed exactly, marked you as aware but non-threatening. Break the rules, and you became interesting. Interesting meant becoming like the thing that had knocked on my door, or the voices in the static, or any of the shapes in the forest. Interesting meant ending up like Sarah Mitchell. I understood now why she was trapped. She'd seen this thing, understood what it was, and that knowledge had marked her. She existed in the spaces between, unable to move on, unable to rest. The only power she had left was to warn others, to try to push them away from the same fate. The thing reached toward me with something that might have been curiosity or hunger. The distinction seemed meaningless to something like this. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. Somehow, impossibly, Margaret was calling. "Get out of Zone C, now!" Her voice was barely audible over the strange harmonics filling the air. "You've been seen. If you stay there more than 3 minutes, you'll never leave." I tried to move, but my feet felt rooted to the concrete. The thing's attention was like gravity, pulling me deeper into its perception. Around me, the flickering intensified. In the strobing darkness, I saw more clearly. All the people who'd been taken over the decades, existing now as fragments, echoes, resources this thing could use when it needed to interact with our world. Robert Mitchell was there, his form flickering in the boundary space. David Torres, translucent and wrong. Others I didn't recognize, all trapped in that horrible in-between state. And I was about to join them. Sarah's ghost appeared beside me. She took my hand. I felt her grip, ice cold but solid, and pulled. For someone who wasn't fully real, her strength was immense. She dragged me backward, away from the thing's focus, toward the edge of Zone C. The entity reached for us with something that wasn't a limb, but produced the same effect, a pulling sensation that went beyond physical force. Sarah screamed, that silent scream I'd seen before, and her form began to fragment, pieces of her peeling away like ash in wind. She was sacrificing whatever remained of herself to save me. "No!" I found my voice and my footing at the same time. I pulled back, dragging Sarah with me. "You've done enough! You've saved enough people!" We crossed the boundary together, stumbling out of Zone C, just as the lights completed their pattern and returned to normal illumination. The layered world snapped back to singular reality. The thing vanished from sight, though I could still feel its presence, always there, always watching. Sarah collapsed onto the concrete. Her form was barely visible now, faded almost to nothing. She looked up at me with those sad, ancient eyes, and this time I heard her voice. Faint, like wind through dead leaves, but clear. "You have to change the rules," she whispered. "The treaty is breaking. It's getting stronger. Soon the rules won't be enough. You have to warn them, make them understand." "How do I tell them about me? Tell them what I learned. Tell them—" Her form flickered, fading more. "Tell them Sarah Mitchell says it's time to close Highway 39 before more people end up like us." She disappeared completely, leaving me alone in the parking lot under normal lights, with my phone still buzzing in my pocket. I answered it. "Margaret, get back in the office, now." Her voice shook with an emotion I'd never heard from her before, fear. "And Alex, you just used up your one mistake. If you'd stayed 5 more seconds, I would have had to call your family." The decision. I finished that shift following every remaining rule with obsessive precision. When I did the 5 a.m. perimeter walk, the shapes in the forest were more active than ever, pressing against some invisible barrier at the tree line. They knew I'd seen. They knew I'd been noticed. At 6 a.m., I left the rest stop and drove straight to Margaret's house. She answered the door in a bathrobe, her expression grim. "I know why you're here," she said, before I could speak. "And yes, I know what it is, what it's always been. I've been the supervisor for this place for 20 years. I know everything." "Then why?" "Because someone has to do the job. Because closing Highway 39 isn't as simple as you think. That thing has been here for thousands of years. The road, the rest stop, they're containment as much as they are access points. The rules create a structure, a routine that keeps it focused on one place instead of spreading." She led me into her kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee. "Every few years, an attendant breaks enough rules to attract its full attention. They get taken, become part of it, and that fazit keeps it satisfied for a while longer. It's horrible, but it's been the deal for 60 years. Sarah Mitchell figured it out," I said. "She created the rules. She tried to protect people." Margaret nodded slowly. "Sarah was brilliant. She lasted longer than anyone thought possible, but she got too close to the truth, too close to understanding what it really was. That kind of knowledge is dangerous when you're dealing with something that exists partially in thought and perception. She wants me to warn people, to close the highway. If we close Highway 39, if we tear down the rest stop, we remove the structure. The thing would be free to spread through these woods, probably for miles. Every car passing through, every hiker, every hunter, they'd all be at risk. Right now, it's contained to one location with rules that work if people follow them. I stared at my coffee. So we just sacrifice one person every few years? That's the solution? Do you have a better one? Margaret's voice was tired. I've spent 2 decades trying to find another way. I've consulted experts, researchers, people who study things that shouldn't exist. They all say the same thing. Containment is the only option. Some things are too big, too old, too fundamental to destroy. You can only manage them. There has to be something. Sarah thought so too. That's why she investigated Zone C. She thought if she understood it completely, she could find a weakness, a way to close the gateway permanently. Instead, she became another ghost, trapped in an eternal loop of trying to save people from her own mistake. Margaret set down her cup and looked at me directly. You have a choice now, Alex. You can quit. I'll find someone new, someone who doesn't know what you know. You walk away, find another job, live your life. But you'll always wonder if the next attendant I hire is the one who gets taken because they weren't as careful as you. Or you stay. You follow the rules perfectly. You survive. And maybe, during the quiet hours, you look for what Sarah was looking for. A real solution. You have knowledge now that most attendants never get. You've seen it and survived. That's rare. I left Margaret's house without giving her an answer. I drove home, slept fitfully through the day, and woke up at sunset to the sound of my phone ringing. Margaret, your shift starts in 3 hours. Are you coming in? I thought about Sarah Mitchell, trapped for 60 years in a loop of sacrifice and warning. I thought about Robert Mitchell, David Torres, and all the others whose forms I'd seen flickering in Zone C. I thought about the thing itself, vast and patient and eternally hungry. I need you to do something first, I said. I need you to get me every note Sarah Mitchell wrote, every observation, every theory. If I'm going back, I'm not just following rules. I'm finding a way to end this. Margaret was silent for a long moment. That's what Sarah said too. Yeah, well, maybe she was right. Maybe she just ran out of time. I checked my watch. I'll be there at 9:30. And Margaret, if I do figure something out, if I find a way to close this thing down permanently, will you help me? Another pause. Then, quietly, yes. God help me, yes. I'm tired of watching people disappear. Get me real hope, Alex, and I'll back you all the way. The research. I've been working at the Highway 39 rest stop for 6 months now. During the slow hours, between the threshold times when I have to focus on following rules, I read everything Sarah Mitchell wrote. Margaret got me copies of her notes, pages and pages of observations written in increasingly frantic handwriting as she got closer to the truth. Sarah had been onto something. She'd documented patterns in the entity's behavior, times when it seemed weaker or stronger. She'd noticed that the threshold times corresponded to old rituals, times that had been considered powerful or dangerous in pre-Christian European traditions. The thing wasn't random. It operated according to rules just as much as we did. I've started my own documentation. I've noted that the thing seems to respond to certain frequencies. The radio static that plays from 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. isn't random. It's a specific frequency that seems to calm or distract the entity. The lights in Zone C flicker at exactly 11:17 p.m., which in military time is 23:17. Add those digits, 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 7 equals 13. The threshold, times all reduced to 13 in numerology. It might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. The woman in blue, Sarah, still appears during my shifts. She's weaker than before, more transparent, but she watches me work. Sometimes she points to specific pages in her notes when I'm reading them, drawing my attention to passages I might have missed. She's still trying to help, still fighting even in her diminished state. Last week, something new happened. During the 3 a.m. knocks, when I said, "I hear you," a voice responded. It was distant and distorted, but I heard it clearly enough. She hears us too. The thing in Zone C is aware that Sarah is still here, still working against it. And it's aware that I'm not just another attendant following rules out of fear. I'm researching it, studying it, looking for weaknesses. Margaret has started helping actively now. She's brought me old county records, geological surveys of the area, historical documents about the dark woods. We're building a picture of what this thing is and how it came to be anchored to this specific location. We think it has something to do with water. There's an underground spring directly beneath Zone C, one that's been here for thousands of years. Indigenous tribes considered this area sacred and dangerous, avoiding it during certain times of year. Early colonial records mention evil vapors and walking shadows in these woods. If we're right, if the spring is the anchor, then there might be a way to disrupt it, redirect the water, change the flow, break whatever connection allows the entity to maintain its presence here. It would be dangerous. It would require going into Zone C during a threshold time. It would require breaking every rule we have. But it might work. Sarah appeared last night, more solid than she's been in weeks. She stood in front of her own notes, pointing at a passage she'd written 3 days before her disappearance. The spring is the key. It's always been the key. But approaching it during the threshold means full exposure. No rules would protect anyone who tried. It would require sacrifice. Perhaps mine. She looked at me and nodded slowly. She'd been planning this 60 years ago, trying to work up the courage to make the attempt. She'd failed, gotten trapped in the in-between, and had been trying to warn people away from her own planned solution ever since. But maybe it's still the right solution. Maybe it just needs someone willing to take the risk with better preparation, better understanding of what they're facing. The plan. It's been 8 months now. Margaret and I have everything ready. We've consulted with engineers about redirecting underground water flow. We've spoken with historians about the indigenous rituals that kept this thing contained before the highway was built. We've even reached out to a few researchers who study paranormal phenomena, though most of them thought we were crazy. The plan is simple in theory, terrifyingly complex in practice. During the next new moon, 3 nights from now, when the threshold times are at their weakest point in the lunar cycle, I'm going into Zone C during the 11:17 flicker. I'll place charges at specific points. Margaret's engineering contacts identified, points that will redirect the underground spring without causing a full collapse. The theory is that disrupting the water flow will break the entity's anchor to this location. It won't destroy it. Something that old and fundamental can't be destroyed by explosives and engineering. But it might force it to retreat, to find a different location, to become diffuse enough that it's no longer a concentrated threat. Or it might just make it angry. We really don't know. Sarah Mitchell has been appearing more frequently as we finalize the plan. She seems agitated, torn between wanting us to succeed and being terrified that we'll end up trapped like her. Last night, she managed to speak clearly enough for me to record on my phone. "If it works," her voice whispered through the static, "we'll be free, all of us who were taken. If it fails, you'll join us, and there won't be anyone left who knows enough to try again. Please, be sure. Please be certain before you risk this." I'm not certain. How could anyone be certain about something like this? But I'm sure that the current situation can't continue. More people will disappear. More attendants will be hired, follow the rules imperfectly, and get taken. The thing in Zone C is getting stronger. I felt it during my shifts, a growing pressure, a sense of expansion. Margaret thinks it's feeding on our modern world somehow. All the cars passing on Highway 39, all the people stopping briefly at the rest stop. They're giving it small tastes of attention, of energy. It's like it's cultivating us, farming humanity for whatever it needs. In Sarah's final notes, she wrote something that's been haunting me. It's patient because it's winning. Every year, every decade, it grows stronger. The rules buy us time, but time is on its side. Eventually, the rules won't be enough. Eventually, it will be strong enough to reach beyond Zone C, beyond the rest stop, beyond Highway 39. Someone has to act while action is still possible. She was right 60 years ago. She's right now. The test run 2 weeks before the planned operation, Margaret and I decided we needed a test run. Not a full attempt, but enough to understand what we'd be facing when we entered Zone C with our equipment. I went in at 11:17 p.m., but this time I only went to the edge of Zone C, not into its center. I carried a digital recorder, an EMF meter, and a thermal camera, equipment Margaret had borrowed from one of the researchers who'd been willing to help, even if they thought we were chasing shadows. The moment I crossed into Zone C's perimeter during the flicker, every piece of equipment went haywire. The EMF meter maxed out immediately, its needle pinned to the highest reading. The thermal camera showed impossible temperature variations, spots of absolute zero next to areas registering hundreds of degrees, all within inches of each other. But it was the audio recorder that captured something truly terrifying. When I played it back later, beneath the static and interference, there were voices, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once, overlapping, creating a cacophony of desperate pleas and warnings. Turn back. It sees you. Join us. Save yourself. Too late. Help us. Run. And beneath all of those voices, something else. A sound that wasn't quite sound, more like a vibration that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The entity itself, perhaps, or its presence translated into something my equipment could detect. Margaret listened to the recording 3 times before she spoke. Every voice on there is a former attendant. I recognize some of them, people who worked here in the 70s, the 80s. They're all still there, Alex. All of them, trapped in that space between... Sarah's voice is on there too, I said quietly. I'd recognized it immediately, that wind-through-leaves whisper I'd come to know over the months. She's saying, the spring, redirect the spring, over and over. Then we know she still believes it's the right approach. Margaret saved the audio file to 3 different backup drives. We need to do this soon, before you lose your nerve, before I lose mine. We set the date for the next new moon. That gave us 2 weeks to prepare, to make sure we had everything we needed, to say our goodbyes in case things went wrong. During those 2 weeks, the activity at the rest stop intensified. It was as if the entity knew something was coming. The woman in blue appeared every night now, more solid and desperate than ever. The shapes in the forest pressed closer during the 5 a.m. perimeter walk. The knocks at 3 a.m. became louder, more insistent. On my second-to-last shift before the operation, something new happened. At 2:15 a.m., during the radio static period, every light in the rest stop went out. Not the flicker of Zone C, everything all at once, plunging the building into absolute darkness. I sat frozen at the desk, my flashlight the only source of illumination. Through the office window, I could see Zone C clearly for the first time without the interference of artificial light. And what I saw made my blood run cold. The entity was visible, fully, completely visible, no flicker required. It towered over the parking lot, a massive shifting form that seemed to be made of darkness and stars and angles that hurt to look at. and it was looking directly at the office, directly at me. The radio crackled to life despite being unplugged. The voice that came through was the entity itself, speaking in that layered, wrong harmony I'd heard in Zone C. You cannot redirect the spring. You cannot break the anchor. This place is mine. It has always been mine. It will always be mine. Your predecessor learned this. Soon, you will too. The lights came back on. The entity vanished from sight. The radio went silent. I sat there, shaking, until my phone rang. Margaret, did you see it? Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Do you still want to go through with this? I thought about Sarah Mitchell, 60 years trapped. I thought about all the voices on that recording. I thought about every future attendant who would be hired, follow the rules, and maybe make one mistake that would trap them forever. Yes, I said, more than ever. It's scared, Margaret. Did you hear it? It's actually scared of what we're planning. That means it can work. Or it means we're about to make things much, much worse. Then I guess we'll find out. The final preparations. The last week before the operation, I barely slept. During the day, I ran through the plan again and again, memorizing every step, every placement point for the charges, every contingency. At night, I worked my shifts with mechanical precision, following every rule perfectly, giving the entity no reason to act against me early. Sarah appeared every night during that final week. We couldn't have full conversations. Her energy was too diminished for that, but she managed brief messages, warnings, encouragements, pieces of information she'd never been able to communicate before. One night, she showed me something I'd never seen before. She took my hand, that ice-cold grip I'd felt before, and pulled me to the window. Then she raised her other hand and pointed, not at the forest this time, but at the ground beneath Zone C. My vision shifted, like looking through her eyes rather than my own. I could see through the concrete, through the earth, down to the underground spring. It flowed beneath the rest stop in a specific pattern, a spiral that seemed to focus directly under Zone C's center. The water wasn't just water. It glowed with a faint, sickly light, and things moved in it. Shapes, fragments, pieces of the entity that existed in liquid form. The spring feeds it, Sarah's voice whispered in my mind. Not just anchors it, feeds it. Cut off the flow and you'll starve it, force it to retreat or dissipate, but you have to redirect the entire underground stream, not just block it. Blocking it will make it desperate. Desperate is dangerous. The vision faded. Sarah released my hand and looked at me with those ancient, sad eyes. I couldn't do it alone, she said. But you have Margaret. You have preparation. You have my notes. You have a chance I never had. Please, don't waste it. I won't, I promised. One way or another, Sarah, this ends in 3 days. She smiled then, the first real smile I'd ever seen from her. 3 days. After 60 years, what's 3 more days? Margaret spent that final week gathering the equipment we'd need. The charges weren't standard explosives. They were shaped charges designed by one of her engineering contacts, specifically made to fracture bedrock in a directional pattern. We'd placed them at 6 points around Zone C's perimeter, and when detonated simultaneously, they'd create fissures that would force the underground spring to redirect through natural channels that already existed in the bedrock. In theory. In theory is a phrase I've come to hate, Margaret said as we loaded the equipment into my car 3 nights before the operation. Everything about this is theoretical. We're basing this on the notes of a ghost and geological surveys that are 40 years old. Do you have a better plan? No, which is why we're doing this one. She handed me a small device that looked like a garage door opener. Dead man's switch. If something happens to you in Zone C, if you get taken or trapped, press this button. It'll trigger the charges immediately. You might not survive it, but at least the entity won't get to use you. I pocketed the device. Cheerful thought. I'm serious, Alex. If you feel yourself slipping, if you feel it pulling you into that in-between space, press the button. Better to die than to spend decades as a warning ghost. The night before the operation, I didn't go to the rest stop. Margaret covered my shift, saying I needed to be rested and focused. Instead, I sat in my apartment and wrote letters, one to my parents, one to my sister, one to my few close friends. I didn't expect to need them, but Sarah's letter to her family had never been sent. She'd planned to mail it after her last shift. She never got the chance. I sealed the letters and left them on my kitchen table with instructions to be opened if I didn't return from work. Then I tried to sleep, knowing I wouldn't be able to but needing to try anyway. At 3 a.m., I heard 3 knocks on my apartment wall. I wasn't at the rest stop. The rules shouldn't apply here. But I heard them anyway, clear and deliberate. I hear you, I said, into the darkness of my bedroom. Sarah's voice came from the shadows near my closet. Tomorrow night, everything changes. For all of us. Thank you for giving me hope again. I'd forgotten what that felt like. We're going to end this, I told her. We're going to set you free. I know, I believe that. For the first time in 60 years, I actually believe it. Her form materialized enough for me to see her face. She looked younger somehow, less worn by decades of ghostly existence. Sleep now, Alex. Tomorrow, we end the nightmare. I did sleep, finally, and I dreamed of the spring beneath Zone C, glowing with sickly light, and something massive and ancient drinking from it like a well. In the dream, I redirected the flow, and the thing shrieked, a sound that shattered reality itself. When I woke up, it was 6 p.m. The sun was setting. In 3 hours, my shift would start. In 4 hours, we would attempt something that might free dozens of trapped souls, or might make everything infinitely worse. There was no way to know which until we tried. Tonight, it's 9:30 p.m. My shift starts in 30 minutes. In my car, I have everything I need. The charges, the detonator, a detailed map of Zone C's underground structures, the dead man's switch Margaret gave me, and a letter to my family explaining as much as I can about what I've been doing for the past 8 months. Margaret is already at the rest stop, monitoring everything from the office. She'll stay on the line with me through a radio headset, guiding me through the process. If something goes wrong, if I don't make it back out of Zone C, she'll close the rest stop permanently and recommend the highway be rerouted. It won't solve the problem, but it will at least stop more people from being hired into this nightmare. Sarah appeared to me an hour ago in my apartment. The first time she's manifested outside the rest stop. She sat across from me, more solid than I've ever seen her, and we had a real conversation. I was scared, she admitted. At the end, when I realized what needed to be done, I was terrified. I went into Zone C hoping to just observe, to gather more data, to put off the actual attempt. That cowardice is why I'm still here. You're not a coward, I told her. You figured out the rules. You saved countless people by creating them. You've spent 60 years trying to protect others. And it's time for that to end. Her voice was firm. One way or another, tonight it ends. Either we break the anchor and I can finally rest, or I'll be there to pull you out like I did before. I won't let you get trapped alone. She stood up, starting to fade. Thank you, Alex, for being brave enough to try, for caring about a ghost's warning, for giving me hope that this nightmare might finally end. Sarah? I called as she disappeared. If this works, you'll remember everything, right? 60 years of being trapped, that's not just going to vanish. Her voice came from empty air. No, I'll remember, but I'll also be free. And that will be worth it. I'll carry those 60 years with me wherever I go next, but I won't be stuck in them anymore. That's all any of us can ask for. Now I'm sitting in my car, watching the sun set, trying to steady my nerves. The letter to my family is on the passenger seat. They think I work maintenance for the county, A boring night job that pays well. They don't know about the rules, the entities, the thing in Zone C. If I don't come back, they'll get the letter. They'll know their son, their brother, died trying to do something good. I hope that's enough. Margaret just texted, "Ready when you are. Stay safe." And Alex, thank you for not walking away. It's time. I'm going to finish this one way or another. For Sarah Mitchell, who spent 60 years as a warning. For Robert Mitchell and David Torres and all the others taken over the decades. For every future attendant who won't have to face this nightmare if we succeed. The Highway 39 rest stop has been taking people for 60 years. Tonight, I'm going to take something from it instead. I'm going to take back hope. I'm going to take back the future. And I'm going to end this once and for all.